there seems to be a new energy coursing through the parliamentary portfolio committees, and it's impossible to ignore. From education to energy, sports to state-owned entities, ministers, deputy ministers, and departmental heads are no longer getting a free pass, it would seem. In a recent striking moment, the Minister of Higher Education and Training found herself under intense scrutiny in the Higher Education Portfolio Committee, challenged sharply on budget allocations, student accommodation, and NSFAS performance, and of course, the SETA board appointments. It was probing, pointed, and relentless. Over in sports, it was no different. When SAFA President Danny Jordaan appeared before the committee, MPs across party lines grilled him on governance and funding issues, sending a strong signal, it would seem. Accountability is non-negotiable. This new culture is being shaped by a younger generation, we're told, of parliamentarians, assertive, informed, and unafraid to demand clarity. They are changing the tone, the expectations, and perhaps even the very purpose of these oversight forums. So what does it all mean for accountability, for service delivery, and for public trust in our democratic institutions? Well, let's unpack it all. I'm joined by Dr. Rachel Fisher, who is Parliamentary Engagement and Research Manager at OUTA, that's the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, as well as Bulelani Philip, SABC News parliamentary reporter of long standing. But before we get to that, let's take a listen to some of those scenes as they played themselves out in some of these committees, and then we'll pick up that conversation shortly thereafter.
Chairperson, through you, I'd like to ask Mr. Jordaan, do you believe in the concept of democracy? Can you please put your microphone on when you respond?
I'm a product of a struggle for democracy.
You have respect for the concept of democracy?
You're asking me a question that is self-evident.
Okay. Do you understand the importance of term limits?
I understand it. I was sitting here as a member of parliament.
Do you understand the importance of term limits?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that you are one of the longest serving presidents of any football association on the planet? I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done. You are one of the longest serving on the planet.
It's
12 years almost.
It's not true.
Can you let me finish? I'm still busy with my interrogation here. And that there...
Honorable Chairperson.
They must ask the questions
just
and
order.
answer. Now he is engaging me now.
Point of order, Chairperson.
Let me make the following ruling. If honorable members ask a question, give SAFA an opportunity to respond.
The people of South Africa must know, where are decisions of higher education taken? You find that a decision is taken in a tavern, we don't know. Because clearly these advisors are more important than all of these officials of Department of Higher Education which are sitting here. Why can't you say, no, the DG advises me, no, the TDG advises me? There is a group, there is a clique in higher education that advises the minister, yet the minister does not want to tell us who these advisors are. So because of time, I'm asking you a yes or no question. And I'm going to follow up on this, you can rest assured. And we're going to get the names of those advisors. I just want, at least on record, to get an understanding from you so that I can move on to the next question. Are you willing to tell us who are these people that advise you to make appointments to SETAs, to make appointments in NSFAS, to make appointments to universities, to make appointments in TVET colleges? Yes or no, so that I can move on to the next question. Thank you, Minister.
I think we need to understand that even with the system of the judges in South Africa, they do have assessors, private assessors who listen. I'm still responding to the question. I'm not going to respond to yes or no. I'm not in court.
No, this is not a court.
I'm not in court. I'm not going to respond in yes or no.
Chairperson, you advised the minister on the issue of time. I simply want to understand if the minister is willing to tell us the panel. If she's not willing to, she must say, I don't want to tell you who advises me. And then I've got a mechanism to find out who advises her. And I'm going to find out who's advising her.
And I think you will agree that this has become quite typical of how some of these committees in Parliament play themselves out. So let's pick up the conversation then with Dr. Rachel Fisher from OUTA, as well as Bulelani Philip, our senior parliamentary correspondent. Bulelani, let me start with you. There's a reading that says something has shifted in the way that the 7th Parliament engages on this task of holding the executive to account, of holding various organizations and structures to account. Is it objectively there, or are we looking for signs of a shift forward, some kind of momentum on accountability where there are none? What's your observation?
Good afternoon to you, Tulas, and to the viewers at home. Of course, I do agree with you that there is a shift in the trend of how the oversight is being exercised by the 7th administration. If I can just take you back, in the previous parliament, the committee that seemed to be very vigor in terms of questions was SCOPA, and that is the committee that has been always using this system of a one question and answer. In other words, you ask a question and then the executive authority or a board chairperson answers. So I think that system is very effective. Now, coming to the 7th administration, we see that system being adopted by the Higher Education and Training Committee, as well as the Sports and Arts and Culture. So I think for me, that trend seems to be the one that is effective in terms of playing oversight. Of course, we'll have to ask the Chair of Chairs of Parliament, Cedric Frolic, why is this system not applied across the board in terms of uniformity? Because it comes across as one that is very effective. Because in the past, when lawmakers have been asking questions to the executive authority, they would field close to 20 questions, and they can pick and choose which ones they want to answer, given the time constraints that are there. But I think in the 7th administration, the fact that you are having this one-on-one engagements, I think that's the one that's very effective.
Dr. Fisher, your observation, is there really a shift in the tone of engagement in the 7th Parliament compared to previous parliaments that included those parliaments that were found to have failed in exercising their duties to hold the executive to account? Or are we looking for signs anyway, just for some kind of hope to cling on to about accountability?
A straightforward response is sure, we are seeing a shift that is occurring. And, it's 1 year since the GNU and the new administration came into being. And there is this trend to see this collaborative spirit, but also taking things head on. Now, if we consider Parliament, it's easy to get stuck in the politics of Parliament, looking at the political parties and the MPs, but we also get the administration side of Parliament that sets out the programming, the scheduling, and all the other support services. Now, part of this experience of seeing how the dynamics have shifted within portfolio committee meetings are also the efforts to engage more closely with the media and other stakeholders. So as an example, Parliament now regularly hosts these media and stakeholder briefing sessions at the beginning of a week, and then they have select portfolio committee chairpersons presenting on their main items on the agenda. Now, this already then gives an indication to the public what's going to happen, what are the key points for attention, and it stimulates this dialogue and discussion between the various parties. From the media side, and then also civil society organizations, because we also attend those sessions, we can already start asking additional probing questions and even give our feedback to these portfolio committees, which they then take back to their meetings in part of their responses to how they deal with their government departments.
So what for you, Dr. Fisher, are the dynamics that have changed in the committees that we observe in Parliament that make it more robust than it was before? Bulelani alludes to, they call it interpolation, where you ask a question and the person sitting across there to give account has to answer to that question specifically within a time limit allocated to each MP who serves in the committee. Is that really the main shift, or is there something to be said for the energy of the people that now compose and comprise these committees?
I would liken it to say Parliament always had teeth, but they never bit. They had this power to summons, to ask these probing questions, to put pressure on those from government and the executive to account for their actions. But we have noticed over the many years before that that power was never utilized. But now we are then starting to see that Parliament is utilizing the powers that they have to put pressure on the executive and then calling them to respond to this. And that's a very tangible difference that we can see. Although we have these mechanisms, as an example, we knew in the past that due to having different majority or a majority party up until now, before onto the 6 of admin, issues were raised. We brought issues to the table of Parliament to say that we've been noticing things. As a clear example, the concerns regarding NSFAS, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, the concerns we are seeing now and that's being addressed within Parliament, we've submitted years ago already to the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Very little was done about it. Now we have the chairperson, Honorable Tebogo Letsi. He is aware of the work that we have been doing and the concerns, and now they are taking action.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's seeing how action is being taken and how the teeth are being used to actually bite and to make that difference.
Yeah. So, Bulelani, what's your observation around how each chairperson sets the tone for each of these meetings and these committees? Let me give you an example. Perhaps you can comment on it. It would seem to me that Songezo Zibi, for example, at Scopa, his focus is to be more educational, get the public to understand the processes and not have people hoodwinked false outrage generated, but outrage founded on the facts. Does that work in that way in the other committees as well, in terms of it's the committee chairperson that sets the tone?
Tunas, I think there's two issues that we have to appreciate. One is by default and one is by design. The default one is that the advent of the government of national unity has ushered in an era where there has to be encompassing of other opposition parties that are within the GNU who are able to chair the committees, which is actually what is currently happening. You'll recall that in the past, the ANC chairpersons have been accused of shielding the ministers when they come to the committees. And now with the introduction of the GNU, the other political parties do not take that posture. They actually want to be fair and get to the facts. The second one is the design one. This conversation should be foregrounded on the recommendations of the Zondo Commission, where he recommended that the appointment of committee chairs must include those of the opposition parties. Now, those two things are interlinked. Now, in the politics of things, each and every party will obviously would want to actually display their effectiveness and their robust oversight. And the second issue to us is that there is no way now of people being shielded because there are other parties who have access to the information, which is why we're seeing that the robust debates that we're seeing in these committees like higher education, sports, arts and culture, they actually come with documents that will be actually supporting the kinds of questions that they are going to ask. So there is no way that these ministers can actually refute those documented evidence. So that's the kind of robust discussions that we're having at the moment, and that should be encouraged.
But a concern, Dr. Fisher, that has been raised, and I saw it being raised in the Sports, Arts and Culture Committee, is the possibility of, now that these committees are gaining traction and prominence with the public, thanks to the advent of them being streamed on digital platforms, there may be a risk of a performative element, an element that is more about, and I think the accusation was made directly against some of the members of that committee, that you're doing this just to get likes. Is it possible to strike a balance, or can it be achieved that the likes do come, the likes, shares and follows do come, but the work is actually being done to hold the executive to account?
Of course, and I mean, it might even be too soon to tell, even though it's been 1 year, right? But at least making some noise has already garnered attention from the public and the media, such as yourself, saying that these differences are being noted, essentially. So even if it's just performative, at least there is noise that is creating additional attention. And hopefully by that attention being created, it also motivates the public to become more informed. What we have also experienced in the past is there's very little interest and participation between the public and the parliament unless you have a vested interest, for example, as we would do as a civil society organization. Now, secondly, the real proof would be in the pudding towards, and I would argue, the end of this year, because annually you get these, what they call the budget review and recommendation reports. And these are the reports then compiled by scrutinizing the annual reports of government entities and looking at the Auditor General's reports of these government entities. And then Parliament does their own scrutiny and they make their own recommendations for these to be addressed. Now, year on year, and we've been doing, in the past, we've got 6 parliamentary oversight reports where we have taken these and compared them to these lists of recommendations, but were they actually attended to? And in many instances, they are just ignored. They are rehashed and recycled for every year's BRRR report. Now, this year is going to be interesting. It's a new group, it's a new dimension that's in play, as you've rightly indicated. But will these recommendations be made and will they be followed through? So we would have to be realistic and give a timeline of at least 18 months and then see next year, what is that turnaround going to be?
Yeah.
As ALTA, we are excited because we have built up this database of all the BRRRs across the years. And we want to see how does the process flow over from the 6th to the 7th. And then what is the actual political will to get those results wanted within the second year of the 7th admin.
All right, let's see how it all unfolds going forward. But it's certainly been an interesting start to the 7th Parliament. Thank you for your time this afternoon. That's Dr. Rachel Fisher, who is Parliamentary Engagement and Research Manager at the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, and of course, Senior SABC News Parliament reporter Bulelani Philip.